So then the other thing to know is when we see the venous bleeding,
لما نشوف الدم الجاي من الأولية
it's going to start to affect the heart because that blood is not returning to the heart to get that oxygen.
هيبتدي يأثر في القلب عشان الدم ده مش راجع للقلب عشان ياخد الأكسجين عشان يكمل الدورة.
Okay, so back home we kind of gauge the amount of blood to determine if it's deadly bleeding.
احنا في كندا بنبص كده بنحاول يعني نعرفها كده بالبلدي.
We say that approximately 2 cups of blood
بنقول يعني حوالي يعني كوبايتين دم
will become a very serious emergency.
هتبقى مصيبة سودة.
Okay, so we need to be able to control that bleeding and get that bleeding to stop.
لازم ان احنا نسيطر على موضوع الاستنساف ونخليه يقف.
Okay, and so how we do that is basically if somebody is bleeding very severely, what you need to do is you need to get some Kleenex, some paper towels, some clothing.
فانت لو حد بيستنسف لازم تجيب بقى حاجة مناديل، فوطة، لبس، أي حاجة.
Anything that you can get to absorb that blood.
أي حاجة تقدر تشفط الدم ده.
Okay, and what we want to do is we want to apply direct pressure onto that wound.
اللي احنا عاوزينه ان احنا نضغط على طول على الجرح.
Okay, I'm just using this as an example, but if the bleeding was only so bad I needed something like this, it's probably not an emergency.
انا بس بوريلكم بس ولا يعني الاستنساف صغير قوي كده ده هي مش طوارئ يعني بس بوريلكم.
Right, so I want to get anything. You want to try to make it as clean as you can because you don't want to get infection.
انت عايز تخليها على انضف ما تقدر عشان مش عايزها تلتهب.
And you just want to apply pressure.
عايز تضغط على قد ما تقدر.
Okay, you can do that by holding it. If the person is conscious and they're able to hold it on themselves, that's fine. You can have them do that as well.
انت تقدر انت تضغط ولا البني ادم واعي ومركز ان هو يضغط هو كمان.
The important thing is that if I have this on the wound and it's bleeding and all of a sudden it becomes soaked in blood.
المهم الحاجة المهمة ان لو انا ضاغط واللي انا حاطه ابتدى يشرب دم.
Is that I don't want to take this off.
لا انا مش عايز اشيل اللي انا حاطه.
To put more on.
لا عشان احط اكتر عليه.
Okay, if this becomes soaked in blood, I will just get more and put it over top.
لو دي شربت دم انا هجيب حاجات تانية احط عليها اكتر.
Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to get that blood to clot.
عشان عايزين نخلي الدم يجلط.
So that it slows down that bleeding and the person isn't losing as much blood and the heart doesn't have to work as hard.
عشان نقلل الاستنساف او البني ادم ما يخسرش دم كتير والقلب يهدى شوية.
Okay, it's kind of like you know, if you get a little cut or something like that.
زي مثلا لو انت اتعورت او حاجة.
And you clean it up, but then all of a sudden it starts to scab, and then you rip it off, and you rip the scab off.
وبعدين انا اتعورت وبعدين ابتدت ان هي تجلط شوية وبعدين رحت شلت القشرة دي.
And then it starts bleeding all over again.
بعدين تروح بقى تبتدي من الاول تنزل دم.
Okay, so if it's an emergency, can I borrow this sweater?
فلو هي طوارئ تستلف البتاع دي.
Take it home.
اروح بيها بقى.
They always say okay, but I won't. Okay. If there is some sort of an emergency where somebody's bleeding, let's just say that it's on my leg.
لو في طوارئ تعالى نفترض ان هي متعوره في رجليها.
But you can see that the person's having trouble breathing, or you're worried that they may stop breathing.
او انت شايف ان هو بقى في مشكله في النفس او انت خايف ان هو يبطل يتنفس.
Oh, wait a minute. It gets soaked in blood.
فتخليها تشرب دم.
I'm just going to put more on.
احط عليها حاجات اكتر.
Okay, you also want to tell the person, you want to keep them still. So again, you want to use your voice, you want to talk to them, you want to try to keep them calm.
انت عايز تخلي البني ادم اللي قدامك ثابت، فانت عايز تتكلم معاه تريحه وتهديه.
Okay, but what I could do is I could use a sweater.
انا ممكن اعمله ان انا استعمل السواتر.
Or a jacket or a towel or anything.
جاكيت او فوطه او اي حاجه.
And I could tie that on. Because I'm tying it tight, I'm still applying that pressure.
وعشان انا بربط جامد فانا لسه بضغط على التعويره.
And it'll allow me to deal with the other whatever else I have to deal with. So maybe I have to help do breathing, maybe they have another injury. You can do that as well.
فبعد ما انا ربطت مدياني فرصة دلوقتي إن أنا أشوف بقى مشكلة تنفس، أشوف مشكلة التعويرة التانية، أشوف ولا في أي حاجة تانية أنا قادر إن أنا أعمل كده.
Okay. Any questions so far?
في أي أسئلة لغاية دلوقتي؟
So sometimes with different accidents that might happen as well, right? And may cause a lot of bleeding.
في حوادث كمان ممكن تحصل تسبب إن يحصل دم كتير.
Is if you have some sort of an object impaled into the skin.
يكون في حاجة معينة دخلت في رجلك أو حاجة.
Okay, so it's important to know if ever there's an object or something that has impaled you or gone into your body.
حاجة مهمة أوي إنه لو في أي حاجة دخلت جوه جسمك أو دخلت جوه جسمك.
Okay. We don't want to ever remove that object.
ما تشيلهاش.
Okay. Whether I've fallen, maybe I've landed on some sort of a post or a pipe, or maybe it's a stab wound from a knife.
وقعت في خرزانة، حد عورك بسكينة، أي حاجة ما تشيلهاش.
Okay, you don't want to remove that. You don't want to pull it out.
ما تشيلهاش.
Because what happens a lot of time is even though the object has gone in and has done a lot of damage, maybe through your organs, anything like that.
هو معظم الأوقات هي بتبقى عملت مشاكل كتير، عورت حاجات كتير.
Right? It's also, if you pull it out, you're going to do more damage, especially if it's a knife or something like that.
بس انت لو شلتها وبالذات ولا هي سكينة أو حاجة حادة، انت برضه هتعور نفسك أكتر وانت بتشيلها.
That object that's in there might actually be helping you to control the bleeding, and if you pull that out, you're going to have a lot more.
بس هي كمان موقفة إن انت تستنسف جامد عشان هي موقفة الدم إن هو يطلع بره.
So if that object is impaled in your skin and there's a lot of bleeding.
فانت ولا في حاجة جوه جسمك وفي استنساف جامد.
Okay, you want to keep that person and that object as still as possible.
فانت عاوز بقى ان انت تخلي الحاجة اللي في جسمك وفي جسم الواحد والبني آدم ده ثابتين.
And you'll apply that pressure around the object.
واضغط حوالين الحاجة الموجودة في الجسم.
So right now I'm actually doing two things.
أنا دلوقتي بعمل حاجتين.
Okay, one, I'm controlling the bleeding by applying the direct pressure.
أنا بسيطر على الاستنساف اللي أنا بضغط على الاستنساف.
And I'm stabilizing that object so that it's not moving around causing more damage or pain.
وبسيطر على الحاجة الحادة إن هي مش بتعورني أكتر ومش وجعاني أكتر.
Okay, and then we will let, once the ambulance comes, we'll let them deal with that because they're supposed to be better equipped to deal with these types of emergencies.
ولما ربنا يفرجها والإسعاف تيجي نخليهم هما اللي يتعاملوا ونشوف بقى.
Okay, the whole time that you're treating people, I can't stress to you enough how important it is that you continue to talk to them.
طول الوقت لازم مهم قوي ان انت تبقى بتتكلم مع البني ادم اللي انت بتتعامل معاه وتريحه، وحاجه مهمه قوي ان انت تبقى مخليه مستريح.
Okay, because no matter what it is, they're going to be scared, they're going to be freaking out, and the calmer you can keep them and keep yourself, the better and easier it's going to be for you to deal with the emergencies.
عشان مهما حصل هو هيبقى خايف ومتوتر والموضوع هيبقى صعب، فكل ما انت عارف تهديه وتهدي نفسك كل ما الموضوع هيعدي بسهولة أكتر وكل ما الموضوع هيبقى مسيطر عليه أكتر.
Okay. Any questions about that?
تمام، في أي أسئلة يا جماعة؟
Clear as mud?
تمام، يعني بتقول يعني تمام زي التين.
You guys have a lot of mud now because it was raining.
انتوا عندكم تين كتير عشان كده بيسمعوا. حد عايز يسأل أي سؤال ما تكسفوناش.
لسه وخلاص يعني؟
اسأل وخلاص يعني.
What did he say?
I'm telling them ask any question. Saying you want me to ask you.
No, just relevant questions is good.
السؤال ليه معنى بس بحب.
The other type of bleeding that we have is a lot harder for us to recognize and to help with.
في نوع تاني من الاستنساف وده موضوع أصعب أوي إن احنا نلاحظه.
And that's the internal bleeding where you can't see it, there is no break in the skin.
ده نزيف داخلي اللي انت مش شايفه ومفيش اي حاجه في الجلد باين.
So a lot of the time the internal bleeding will happen because of accidents, any blunt force trauma to our body.
دي بقى بتحصل بحوادث، حد خبط، حد قرر ان هو ينط من دور عالي بتاع.
Okay, so if you have somebody that's been in some sort of an accident or there's been any sort of force hard enough that you believe could have damaged any of the organs or tissue inside the body that causes bleeding.
فلو انت عندك حد كان في حادثة او دخل في او خبط في حاجة جامد قوي ان هو ممكن يبقى عنده نزيف داخلي.
One of the most common areas for internal bleeding would be our abdominal area here because of our organs and everything that's there.
اكتر اماكن ممكن يبقى فيها نزيف داخلي الحتة اللي فيها الاعضاء، الحتة دي.
As well as our brain.
مخنا برضه.
Okay, so for this you have to kind of have more information about how the accident happened, what happened.
في دي لازم الناس تبقى عندك معلومات عن الحادثة حصلت ازاي.
And it's something that you're going to start to see the signs and symptoms appear more slowly over a period of time.
دي بقى انت بتشوف بقى التأثيرات الحادثة حصلت عبر الوقت.
Okay, so if you're dealing with somebody who's been in an accident, just think about that. If there was any blunt force trauma, then you should be thinking in your head as time goes on, okay, maybe there could be internal bleeding, and then watch for some of the signs and symptoms of that.
يعني لو حد كان في حادثة وقع بتاع ممكن تبقى انت بتفكر ان هو في نزيف داخلي فتبقى كل شوية بتطمن عليه وتشوف ولا هو كويس.
So it may start out as it may look like there's some sort of bruising, it might not.
ممكن يبقى في ورم هنا ممكن لا.
But over the course of time, maybe a few minutes, maybe a couple hours, depending on how serious it is.
ممكن في بعض دقايق أو ساعات.
You may start to see the discoloration on the skin.
هيحصل تغيير في اللون هنا.
Okay, sometimes, especially in this area, what happens is the abdominal area will become sort of swollen or hard to the touch.
الحتة دي بالذات معظم الوقت الحتة دي بتورم وبتبقى تقيلة.
Okay, the person may feel dizzy. Okay, excessive thirst, so being extremely thirsty.
ممكن يبقى عطشان قوي.
Could also be a good sign for you that there may be some sort of internal bleeding.
دي لو هو عطشان قوي ممكن تبقى دي ساين ان هو علامة يعني ان هو في نزيف داخلي.
Okay, and if you believe that there is or that it's possible or that's what you think, you should get them to a medical facility because it's a life-threatening emergency.
فلو هو ابتدى بقى يبقى في العلامات دي وديه على المستشفى على طول عشان هو ممكن يروح فيه.
And again, that's not something that we can fix because we're not doctors. We can't go inside somebody's body and
احنا برضه مش دكاترة فاحنا برضه بنحاول بس ان احنا نلم الموضوع على قد ما نقدر.
But it's really important for me as a first aider or for you guys who work in the medical field to be able to recognize these things.
بس هي حاجة مهمة في مجالنا ان احنا نبقى قادرين ان احنا نلقط الحاجات دي. نبقى قادرين نعمل الإسعافات الأولية.
Because the quicker we can recognize it and we can start providing some sort of treatment, the better chance for success.
عشان ان احنا نقدر نلقطها بسرعة وان احنا نقدر نساعد بسرعة نسبة النجاح بتاعها.
Okay, so it's really important even in that case again monitor their breathing.
وتاني بخلي يراقبوا التنفس بتاعهم.
Also their color, right? Their color in their face and their body will change.
لون جلدهم لون جسمهم عامل ايه.
Okay, and that sort of stuff.
الجو.
Okay, so.
I joked around.
You joked around? No, you don't tell me the jokes. It's okay. Joke around. So those are the things that we would do initially when we're looking at any sort of bleeding emergencies.
دي الحاجات المبدئية اللي احنا هنعملها في طوارئ النزيف.
So we also say that any fall greater than the fall of your own height.
كمان أي وقعة أعلى من وقعة طولك.
Okay, you should be looking at perhaps there's some sort of a head injury if they've hit their head, anything like that.
لازم على طول تتأكد إن أنت مفيش حاجة حصلت ارتجاج أو أي حاجة.
Okay, so it's just important to be aware, making sure that the person over time You know, if they have any sort of head injury, obviously there'll be some physical signs. Maybe there'll be bleeding, there'll be bumps, that sort of stuff.
لازم تتأكد برضه إن هو مفيش ورم، مفيش دم بينزل، الحاجات العادية.
Okay, and sometimes as far as minor concussions, things like that, you know, we can deal with just by continuing to monitor the person over a period of time.
برضه ولو هو ارتجاج بس احنا محتاجين ان احنا نبقى برضه عيننا عليه ومطمنين على النفس والحاجات.
Asking them questions, right? What's your name? Where do you live? What date is it today?
برضه بنسأل اسمهم، التاريخ، عايش فين، إيه اللي بيحصل. تقول لها العصير طعمه حلو، الطماطم، الكشري انت عارف.
Okay. They never had kosher, so they don't know. One of the major signs of a head injury or neck or spine injury.
حاجة من العلامات الواضحة أوي يكون في إصابة في المخ أو في الرقبة أو في
Head, spine.
عمود الفقري.
Okay. Is the person may be very dizzy.
البني آدم ممكن يبقى دايخ أوي.
Okay, vomiting, nausea.
بيرجع.
Okay.
بطنه مقلوبة.
Those are indications that there could be something else going on, and it's probably a good idea to get that individual to a medical facility where they can do more tests.
دي علامات ان في حاجه بتحصل، فدي فكره حلوه ان انت تروح تكلم دكتور، توديه مستشفى، تشوف اي حاجه.
Okay, and then one of the other areas that we were going to talk about was broken bones.
ودي برضه عايزين نتكلم لو في حاجه حصل كسر.
Okay, so when there's any sort of injury, sometimes it's hard for us to tell whether the bones are actually broken or not.
فساعات كتير احنا مبنبقاش متاكدين لو في كسر ولا لا.
Okay, so you need to use your expertise and your knowledge of how the accident happened, the age of the person, and in just your experiences in general when dealing with this kind of stuff.
طبعا انتوا خبراتكم يعني كبشر يعني وانتوا عارفين وازاي الموضوع حصل، محتاجين ان انتوا ترجعوا لده.
Obviously, if we're talking about an open fracture, that's very clear. We know that that's happened because the bone's coming out of the skin.
لو كسر مفتوح اللي هو انا شايف العظمه دي واضحه قوي يعني مكسور.
Okay, in that case, back home in Canada, we treat that as we do an impaled object, an object in the skin.
So what do you mean?
So we do the same thing. We have the person stay still where they are.
ماشي، لو العظمه طالعه بنعمل نفس الحاجات اللي احنا عملناها بالظبط. لو في حاجه دخلت في الجسم بنثبته، بنربط بريشر، نتاكد ان مفيش دم كتير بيطلع كتير، بنطمن على كل الحاجات نفس اللي احنا عملناها بالظبط.
Okay, we don't want to try to move the bone or put anything back in place on our own.
مش بنحاول نحرك العظمه في مكانها، نظبطها بتاع.
Because the bones are very sharp and they're very tough. So to break a bone, we don't know if it's done any other damage inside to any of our organs or our tissues, anything like that.
العظم حاجه تقيله قوي وحاجه حاده قوي، فاحنا مش عارفين هي عملت ضرر ايه في الجسم اصلا، فمش حاجه احنا بنلعب فيها يعني يكفينا شراب.
So we want to really have the person rest. We want to stabilize it depending which bone it is. Maybe we're going to put something around it like I did with the bleeding, especially if it is bleeding.
احنا عايزين البني ادم يستريح، يقعد في مكان ثابت، نعمل ضغط عليها، نفس اللي احنا عملناه بالظبط لو في حاجه دخلت في رجله.
And we're really going to want to watch that person and treat them for shock.
وعايزين برضه ان احنا نبقى مركزين معاه، وهو ممكن يبقى عنده حاجه اسمها شوك، يعني هو مخضوض جامد، صدمه.
Okay, so it's going to be very scary. It's going to be very painful. We need to be able to get them to relax and calm down so they're not trying to move around, their heart's not beating any faster than it needs to, getting rid of more blood than they can't have.
هو هيبقى في صدمه وخايف قوي وبيفرق، لازم احنا نهديه ونهدى، نبضات قلبه تهدى عشان الدم برضه ما يطلعش من جسمه كتير.
Okay, a lot of people, especially that break bones and stuff, when they go into shock, So a lot of the times they will go unconscious.
ناس كتير قوي بالذات لما بتكسر حاجة بتخش في صدمة وبيغمى عليها.
As long as they're breathing, that's not a huge deal.
طالما هو بيتنفس مش مصيبة يعني.
Might be better for us because they're not freaking out.
ممكن تبقى حاجة مريحة بالنسبة لنا عشان هو يعني مش مرعوب على نفسه في المرحلة دي.
Right? We're just going to leave it alone. We're going to control the bleeding. We're going to try to keep them calm, keep them warm.
مش هنحاول نفوقه، هنحاول ان احنا نشوف النزيف، نسيطر على النزيف، نبقى جاهزين ان هو لما يفوق نبقى مطمنينه، نبقى متأكدين ان هو مش بردان.
A lot of people when they go into shock, they'll be very cold.
ناس كتير لما بتخش في صدمة لما بتفوق بتبقى بردانة قوي.
Because their body isn't circulating the blood that in the proper way that it needs to, so we just put a blanket over them, have them rest.
عشان الناس لما بتخش في صدمة الدورة الدموية ما بتبقاش شغالة صح، فبنحط بس بطانية عليهم وبنقول لهم استريحوا.
And wait for some more medical personnel to come.
وبنستنى الإسعاف لما تيجي.
Now, if you don't believe that there's been an actual full break in the bone, maybe it's just a minor fracture, something like that.
لو انت مش مصدق ان هو العظم اتكسر بجد ممكن يبقى شرخ او حاجه.
Okay, then in Canada it doesn't work for you guys probably, but we use the acronym RICE. So again, we have the person rest, and when we say rest, we mean in whatever position is comfortable for them.
بنريح البني ادم، ولما بقول بريح البني ادم يعني بقعده باي قعده هو مستريح فيه.
Okay, we say immobilize, so no move.
بنقول يعني ثبته في مكانه يعني ما تحركوش.
You can find anything around
ممكن تلاقي اي حاجه موجوده حواليك.
that you can find. So if you had sticks, you had knives, you had books.
فيعني في كتب، في سكاكين، في عصيان صغيره، خلال اي حاجه.
It's just important to remember. So say if I have something here, right? Say I fell and I really hurt it and it's all swollen.
انا وقعت ووجعتها وورمه وبتاع.
Okay, I need to immobilize it. So basically, I just want to be able to stop it from moving.
انا عايز بس اثبتها يعني انا عاوزها بس تبطل تتحرك.
Right, and you can use anything that you find.
ممكن تستعمل اي حاجه انت ممكن تلاقيها.
Now, if it's an injury, I'm just giving you an example here. If it's an injury here on my wrist,
فانا بس بديكم مثال يعني فهي لو تعويره هنا.
I don't want to immobilize it or splint it in like this.
انا مش عايز اثبتها او يعني اثبتها كده يعني.
The reason is that any movement of this part, my hands, my fingers, anything,
السبب ان انا لسه قادر احرك ايديا كده.
will make movement and stuff in here, which will cause it just to hurt more, right? It won't heal.
قادر ان انا احرك الحته دي ففي الاخر برضه الموضوع مش هيتلم.
So if it was in this area, for example, I would want to cover it so that now I've restricted the movement above and below the area.
فرحت انا وصلت الحته اللي انا مثبت الحته من فوق ومن تحت فمش قادر ان انا احرك دي خالص.
Right, and then maybe I use his sweater again and I wrap it up and I tie it on.
ومحتاج اروح استعمل السواتر بتاعه واروح رابط اللي انا تثبيته ومتاكد ان هي ثابته خالص.
Okay, it would be the same if it was any sort of injury, say here for example.
وهتبقى نفس الحاجه لو كانت تعويره هنا مثلا.
Okay, if that's the case, I want to make sure that I immobilize the foot as well.
لو ده الموضوع يبقى عايز اتاكد ان انا مش قادر احرك الحته دي برضه.
So it doesn't do me any good to just wrap this area.
فانا مش مستفاد حاجه ان انا مثبت الحته دي.
Because if my ankle can move, it's moving the muscles and everything inside here, right?
عشان انا لو ركبتي بتتحرك يبقى انا العضله اللي هنا برضه بيتحرك يعني.
So depending what I have in the room,
بعتمد على الموجود في الأوضة.
which I can see 100 things around here which would be useful.
أنا شايف 100 حاجة ممكن أستخدمها.
But maybe I'm going to wrap it like this.
بس ممكن إن أنا أروح عاملة في الحتة دي.
I'd wrap something around here and I would wrap so this part comes up here so it holds and stops my ankle from moving.
وأروح لفة من هنا ولفة من هنا فأروح مثبت إن أنا ركبتي الحتة دي ما تتحركش خالص.
Does that make sense?
فاهمين يا جماعة؟
Yeah. Okay. And then what we also do is because with most of the injuries to the tissues or the muscles or the bones, it's the swelling that causes so much pain.
احنا معظم الحاجات في النسيج والعضل والحاجات دي لما تتعور الوجع كله بيجي.
So we need to try to reduce that swelling to reduce the pain.
الوجع كله بيجي من الورم، فاحنا بنحاول نقلل الورم عشان نقلل الوجع.
So how we do that is we say we use ice or something cold. We use frozen vegetables.
فاستعمل حاجات ساقعة على طول، تلج، خضار، أي حاجة بقى موجودة.
Okay, and we'll put that on the injured area for approximately 20 minutes out of every hour.
تلت ساعة من كل ساعة تحطها على الحتة الورمة.
Okay, if you're using ice or something very similar to ice, just don't apply it directly onto the skin. Put a piece of cloth or something in between.
لو أنت بتستعمل تلج أو حاجة بتسيح ما تحطهاش على التعوير على طول، حاول تلاقي حاجة تفصل بين التلج والتعوير.
Because otherwise what you'll do is you'll freeze the skin and the nerves in the skin and you can do damage to that as well.
عشان أنت كده ممكن تعمل حاجة في الأعصاب. شفت بقى أنت بتلخبط في الأعصاب. لا أنا اتلخبطت. لا هي
لسعة الجليد
يا عم هي الأعصاب. يعني أنت لو
To the
ثبت
skin, the nerves.
نيرفز.
Skin and nerves.
أنت لو حطيت التلج كتير وثبته من غير ما تفصل ممكن تعمل حاجة، ممكن تتلج الأعصاب فتعمل مشكلة.
Okay, and then what we do is we just have the person elevated.
بعدين بنخلي البني آدم يحرك.
And by, can you throw me the pillow?
ممكن مخدة.
It's like you're translating, but I feel like they all understand me anyways.
هو كم واحد فاهم إنجليزي؟
Only one, eh? They all understand, but only one. So what I mean by elevate, I don't mean you have to, put it up to the sky. I just mean by elevate, if it was my foot injury or something, if I'm laying down, you just want to raise it just a little bit. Not enough that it hurts. Just raise it a little bit, it helps with the blood flow.
فهي لو ورمة أو حاجة أنت عاوز ترفع رجليك بس أنت ترفعها شوية عن جسمك عشان بس الدورة الدموية تشتغل.
Right, so just even like this, right? It just helps.
بتساعد بس شوية.
Keeping in mind whatever is most comfortable for the person though. If it hurts and they're screaming, we're not going to make them do it.
بس برضه يعني مش عاوزين إن احنا نضايق البني آدم يعني، ولو قاعد يصوت وبتاع خلاص.
Unless it's our brother or sister and we don't like them very much.
لا هو يعني ولا أخونا الصغير أو أختنا الصغيرة صباح الفل.
صباح الفل دي.
صباح الفل. Yeah, and then it just takes time. And those ones, because again, I'm not talking about a full break, but those types of injuries take way longer to heal.
بس يعني الإصابات زي دي بتطول أكتر.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
أي أسئلة يا جماعة؟ تمام.
No? Good. It's because you all understand everything.
عشان كلكم فاهمين كل حاجة ما شاء الله.
Okay, so we just want to do a little wrap up.
عايزين بس نراجع كده خفيف.
Okay, so what do we do if we come in a room and somebody's laying on the floor?
نعمل ايه لو دخلنا ولقينا واحد مرمي؟
Check and breathe.
What do you say?
check breathe.
Check the breathing. How do we do that?
ازاي؟
By shift and blow
Yes?
for him and
Yeah. So looking for the chest to rise, feeling it on our face, maybe we can hear it, right? Even just tapping, hello, hello.
حتى لو يعني نخبط عليه كده نشوف هو جاي ولا لا.
Do that first, just in case they're drunk.
تأكد ممكن يبقى ضارب ولا حاجة.
If you don't, all of a sudden you're like, ah! Like, no. Hello? Okay. Then do that. Good. If they're not breathing, what's the second thing you would do?
لو مش بيتنفسوا ايه تاني حاجة هنعملها؟ ازاي بقى؟
Anything else?
كده
30
واحدة كده. بنستعمل ايه؟ بنستعمل كتفنا ولا بنستعمل ايدينا ولا بنستعمل
كتف الظهر
كتف والظهر؟
They need to call 911. They need to
كل
call 911.
اتصل
انتوا
بالإسعافات.
محتاجين تكلموا الاسعاف الاول.
So that seems
محتاجين تكلموا.
Hey, you know what? It did come the other day at the pyramids. I called an ambulance for a lady.
هي كلمت اسعاف في العزومات وجت
5 minutes.
5 دقايق.
انا عشان انتوا اجانب.
That's because you're foreign.
No. I had the guy from Pizza Hut call. I didn't call.
هي بتقول ان هي الراجل بتاع بيتزا هات تكلمها. He probably told them you were foreign.
No, a lady, one of the ladies that works there actually, she had passed out going down the stairs. And then everybody was like, so we just, yeah, they were like, all I hear is, Krista! I was like, what is going on?
واحدة أغمى عليها في بيتزا هات عند الهرم وقعدوا يصوتوا.
مصرية.
إيه؟
مصرية.
مصرية. وهم اتكلموا عليها بالإسعاف.
بيتزا هات.
And yeah, pizza, and I love pizza. And to be honest, I was a little bit afraid because I'm in Egypt. I was like, oh no.
هي بتحب بيتزا هات بس كانت خايفة منه شوية عشان هي في مصر.
I can do a Canadian jail, but I can't do an Egyptian jail.
I don't understand.
Like,
هي ممكن تتسجن في كندا بس تخاف تتسجن في مصر.
yeah, because everybody tells me when I do a lot of this training in the beginning years ago, they used to say, no, we wouldn't because we'd be afraid we'd be blamed.
هي بتخاف ان هي تدي الورش زي دي عشان كانت تخاف لو حصل مصيبة الغلط يجي عليها.
So in my head I was like, oh God. But it worked, it was fun.
بس قشطة.
And we left before the police came.
وهما في الحوار بتاع الهرم ده مش قبل ما البوليس يجي فتمام.
But okay, so the first thing, if nobody's breathing, you're right. You want to do a look, listen, and feel. Make sure they're breathing or not breathing.
أول حاجة لازم تبص تسمع تحس تتأكد إن هما بيتنفسوا ولا مش بيتنفسوا.
Okay. If they're not breathing, though, regardless, you do have to call an ambulance because you can't do this forever.
لو مش بيتنفسوا مهما حصل كلم الإسعاف عشان أنت مش هتقدر تعمل الإسعاف الأولي للأبد.
And then we're going to do exactly what you guys had said. We're going to do 30 compressions, 2 breaths, make sure we pinch the nose, tilt the head back.
فاحنا هنعمل 30 برضه صح، هنعمل نفسين، نقفل المراخير، نرجع الراس ورا.
Okay, if you get too tired, then ask somebody else. Like if you guys are together and it's at work or something, just switch off, have somebody else do it. If you're too tired, that's okay.
لو تعبت خلي حد تاني يخش، مش مشكلة مش عيب. لو انتوا في الشغل وحصل الموضوع ده خلي حد تاني يعملها برضه.
Okay. If somebody's choking but they're still coughing or talking, we know, you guys said, we tell them keep coughing.
لو حد كان شارعين بس لسه بيكح وبيتكلم ما هنسيبه يكح، احنا عارفين دي خلاص.
What happens if all of a sudden they go?
اللي يحصل لو ابتدى يعمل الصوت ده. نخبط الصوت نخبط تاني. 1 2 3 4 5.
Okay, so first we want to be able to get that object out, so we do 5, and then the back blows, right?
نعمل 45 بنضربه على بعض.
What about if it's a baby, what do we do first?
لو هو طفل بنعمل ايه الأول؟ ايه؟ لازم بصباعين 2 fingers first.
Okay, first thing I would do, that is part of it, but first bend them over.
أول حاجة نلوم على ظهرهم وبعدين نخبط على ظهرهم.
That will be more effective. It's if you do this and it doesn't come out, then flip them over and do that.
لو بعد عملية الظهر ما طلعتش اقلب واعمل دي.
But 9 times out of 10, if you flip them over and you do this good, it's gonna work, I think.
9 من 10 لو انت قلبتهم وضربت جامد هو هتطلع من
Okay?
تمام؟
تمام?
شكرا يا جماعة.
ماشي ماشي. Anything else? What? Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, that's good. So if somebody's choking, can I usually do one?
Yeah.
But if I go around like this and the person is too large,
لو واحد بيدخل بس هو البني ادم كبير قوي
Okay? And I can't get around them to do this.
وانا مش قادر ان انا اوصل ان هو اعمل كده.
I have two options.
عندي اختيارين.
Okay? Sometimes if you go up under the armpits like this,
ارفع زي كده.
even though I'm not down here, this is still better than nothing.
انا مش عندي البي بس لسه احسن من بلاش.
Or I can have the person come up against the wall.
او ان انا اخلي البنات يروح على الحيطه.
Okay, you don't lose this. Here, just go like this. There you go. Go up against it. Yeah, so you can have the person stand against the wall because maybe they're too big, or maybe I'm short and the person's too tall.
ممكن ان هو يبقى كبير قوي ويمكن هو اطول مني وانا قصيره.
Make sure I keep my face out of that way.
محتاج ان انا وشي مش في وشه.
I can bend down, use this part of my hand.
بوطي واستعمل الحته دي من ايدي. واعمل كده.
And do it that way. Okay? Because depending on the size of us, we're all different. Maybe I'm not going to be able to do this, or I'm not going to be strong enough to do it. Then do it that way.
عشان في احجام مختلفه فلو احنا احجامنا مش متناسبه اعملوها بالطريقه دي.
Okay. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
اي اسئله تعليقات او شكاوي.
Questions, comments, I'll take. Concerns, he can take.
اسئله او تعليقات هي هتاخدها، شكاوي انا هاخدها.
Other than that, I think we're done. So we're going to get going, and I just want to say thank you for having me here and in Egypt, and hopefully I'll see you again sometime.
تمام خلصنا وهي هتمشي، وشكرا ان انتوا استضفتوني في مصر وعايز اشوفكم تاني ان شاء الله.
And you look very Canadian.
وانت شكلك من كندا.
Very Canadian. And if anybody doesn't mind, you don't have to, but if we could, I would like to have a group picture.
لو ما حدش عنده مانع تحب ان تتصور معانا.
And I'll tell you why, because when I go back home, I like to show my friends all the people that were training.
يعني احب اوري اصحابي لما ارجع كندا الناس اللي انا ضربتهم وكده.
Because I want them to see and I want them to come over.
عشان يشوفوا هم ييجوا.
And it helps if I can show them pictures.
بتساعد ان احنا نشوف صور، بتساعد السياحة.